We talked about data-driven executive decision making. Let's say you get to a point where you're making a decision, you're going in a specific direction. How then do you translate that data, that information, those insights to the field?
Yeah. This is something I think about a lot. And the reason I think I mean, it's obviously important for the reasons that I talked about earlier with both LinkedIn and NerdWallet, where I thought something that was so amazing was that every single person at those companies knew what metric they were driving and how they were contributing to the business. So it is an incredibly powerful thing to roll data and specifically not just data on like how to do your job, but data on the core business metrics and how we as a company are driving to that, down to the field, down to the lowest level of the organization. It's massively valuable. What you then end up having is you're having a conversation with executives on noticing that a metric is up or down, and you know exactly what to go do to drive that metric in whichever direction you want. So let's say one of your metrics is down, and the question becomes, how do we fix it? If, let's say, your sales reps or your customer success reps or whoever's responsible for that metric is not only monitoring, but also responsible for, incentivize on that metric, all you do is say, great, we're going to go talk to that team. It becomes like a really beautiful loop. That said, there are a lot of metrics at the executive level that are not really appropriate for the field. And so this is where it gets complicated. At the executive level, for example, the number of calls that a sales rep makes is really important for how good they are at their job. Super basic, super important. Should the CEO be tracking the number of calls that a sales rep makes? Absolutely not. Should the CEO be tracking the sales rep's overall productivity in dollars? Absolutely. That said, you're not going to drive, let's say, you're not going to say to sales reps, well, the team you're on has been less productive this year and we need you to drive that up. They're going to be like, what do you want me to do about it? What they need to know is make more calls, send more emails, have more in-person meetings. And so figuring out how to balance the need for at the executive level to have macro metrics that are large enough, that encompass essentially a broad enough swath of a business that they're meaningful, and then having metrics that go to the field that are actionable, something they can specifically drive. And so I think that balance is really important. And so as awesome as it is, when you can find a metric that you can drive all the way through from the CEO all the way down to the field, that's amazing. Sometimes you need modifications and tweaks in order to do that.
So when you're doing that for different types of teams, like marketing, sales, customer success specifically in the commercial stack, do you have to approach that translation and that rolling out in different ways based on those types of teams? And if so, what are some of the differences?
Yes, definitely. I'm laughing as I say this because definitely those teams, one of the great learnings that I've had of working in the go-to-market world is just how differently these teams are driven, even though they work so closely together. So the most core example of that is, what does a salesperson respond to? They respond to more pay. Basically, like it just comes down to pay. So tell them how to hit their quota so they can make more money. They're on board. Someone in marketing, not only are they not on a quota and therefore you can't just pay them more, but also someone who goes into marketing, they're just a very different person from someone who goes into sales. Especially I think in marketing and customer success, you get a lot of people who just really love working with clients. They love working with customers. They really thrive in the environment where they're thinking about how do we get our message out there? How do we ensure that people understand who we are? How do we make sure that someone has a great experience? Like the thank you that they get from a customer can be as valuable as, an extra $20,000 is to a sales rep. And so these teams work so closely together, but they're not only are there like incentives in terms of how they're paid so different, but they're like literally their incentives as the kind of people that end up in those roles can be really different as well.
Do you have any tips for managing and handling those types of conversations and understanding that if you were to do one thing right when talking to marketing, this is probably what it should be from a biz ops and strategy perspective, and sales and customer success?
Something I have found very interesting about sales and customer success, they work so closely together. They're literally the teams that touch clients the most. They often share clients, but they're so different. And so for salespeople, again, like it just comes down to think about their incentive structure, think about their compensation plan. Beyond, at these very early days of a startup, you're going to be hiring salespeople whose behavior will be driven by how you pay them. So if you pay them to just go out and get dollars, they'll just go out and get dollars. That doesn't mean they're getting dollars the way you want them to get dollars. If there's a new product that you want them to drive, you have to put some kind of a kicker in there. You have to say, great, go get dollars, but also sell this product. And here's what I'm going to give you if you sell this product. The same would go for if you want them to drive certain activity. It might be that, for example, Some companies have hybrid sales reps, and it is always easier to just go and try and sell more products to a customer that's already convinced that already buys from you than it is to go make a new sale to someone who has no sense of, your company and who you are. You may need to incentivize reps to go and do that new business motion, which takes a lot more time. It's a lot harder than just kind of going and fishing in the existing pools. So if there's my biggest lesson of working with sales teams is incentives are everything. Customer success is a whole different animal. Customer success obviously takes many different forms and it can mean many different things at different companies. But typically the people who go take a job with the title customer success, they really care about the customer experience. They genuinely are there to ensure they love seeing that a customer is happy. They love getting, as I mentioned earlier, that email saying thank you. They love the testimonials. They care about their NPS scores. It's a whole other ballgame. And so, I've seen instances where we've tried to put customer success representatives or, customer success managers on more like incentive-based plans. It's really hard. They don't want to think about driving dollars from their customers. This is not always true, right? But often it's true. They want to think about just making that customer happy, which creates it's definitely a delta between how those two teams operate.